Welcome to the Ignited Recovery Podcast, a new way forward for anyone looking for answers but feeling left out. If you've been searching for empowerment, triumph, and purpose, you've found them right here. You won't hear the same solutions, and you're not going to have any excuses to fall back on, because Ignited Recovery allows heroes to rise and become their best selves. I'm Dr. Adi Jaffe, and I can't wait to be your guide on this journey. Are you ready to become an ignited hero? Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Ignited Recovery Secrets Podcast. I'm Dr. Adi Jaffe. So happy to be here with you today. You know, every once in a while, when you want to create real change, you have to be a certain kind of person, an unconventional person. In some ways, I get to play that role in the recovery world, and I catch a lot of flack for it oftentimes, and that's okay. It's part of the deal. Cielo, the person that is here today, the owner and founder of Ferm Fatale, is exactly one of those people. You're going to see exactly what I mean in a few moments when we get into the interview. And it's only these sort of people that can see a world that is so different, monumentally different than what there is right now, to embark on these kind of crazy, weird, strange, wild, exciting missions to change the world. Ferm Fatale is a line of non-alcoholic but low alcohol options that you can integrate into your life, whether you're just trying to be healthy or if you are trying to reduce or stop drinking. I love their mission. I love the drinks. We have them upstairs. And at the end of this, we're going to have a little surprise for you today. So check out this interview. I think you're going to love it. And again, very unconventional approach, very unconventional person. Hopefully somebody who can deliver very unconventional results. Enjoy. I feel like for many of us who drink, that can be sort of like the thing you go to, because I don't personally, I'm drinking water right now, but I'm not a huge fan of drinking water. I'll be honest. I'll really
not in a
plainly,
social setting.
Not in a social setting, but also more than that, it's just like, it's a little boring to me, even at home. It's just boring. And I don't really like being bored. And what I tell all of my clients all the time is if you want to enjoy yourself, get other things that you can enjoy drinking. And so, it's really beautiful to have, I feel like there's a whole industry now that's come up. And obviously we'll talk about how you got your ideas and everything like that to come up with the brand. But it's due time that we don't only enjoy drinking either sodas, which is the one terrible version of it, right? Which is really sugar,
Right.
or alcohol, which is also sugar, but then gets you that intoxication, anxiety reducing kind of thing. And so it's so beautiful.
You know that Coca-Cola was originally marketed as a health tonic.
Sure. And with actual coca plant.
Isn't that ridiculous though? Well, it had, the 12 tablespoons of sugar per can then.
Sure.
That's the irony, is that, we didn't realize that sugar is the gateway drug until, the past decade, maybe, whenever people started becoming insanely obese in the United States after the Industrial Revolution. So it's really interesting to see people becoming more and more educated about what they're putting in their mouth.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's generally becoming more and more true. I want to hear a lot about what brought you to creating Ferm Fatale, and like, what was the idea behind it?
Well, I have to peel it back a few layers to really paint the big picture for you. So I was a child medium. So dead people started talking to me when I was 8. And I sat in cemeteries and waited for more dead people to come and talk to me. I grew up really rural in Pennsylvania and started, taking pride in like gutting animals and preparing animals. Like we killed everything we ate. So I grew up, like, all my neighbors were Amish. And I wasn't allowed to shoot guns. So I would take a lot of pride in like gutting animals. And I got my first deer when I was 9. It wasn't something I was squeamish about. And long short, I ended up going to mortuary college and studying reconstructive cosmetic artistry in college. And I ended up leaving my last semester because my gift as a medium ended up getting in the way. I was really sensitive to a lot of the younger spirits that had their lives cut short. And I pivoted and became a healer and used those gifts at my own private clinic for nearly 20 years in Florida. When I came out to LA after a long break, I had a 22-year marriage. I know it's hard to believe that I was with my high school sweetheart for 22 years and was newly single, never lived alone in Los Angeles. I didn't have my career any longer, and I was looking to reinvent my life. So I hired a couple consultants and was telling them about an online program that I had created called Rhythm Lifestyle. And Rhythm Lifestyle had 3 pillars based on the seasons: diet, movement, philosophy. So I started telling them about the program, and they said, which part of the program are you most passionate about? And I said, diet. They said, why? And I was like, well, I got really sick when I was 24 years old with an autoimmune disease, and the doctors couldn't figure it out, but I couldn't put anything in my mouth for nearly a year and a half. And I was at a Dave Matthews concert during this time period, and all my friends were tapping a keg, and I remember feeling super left out because I couldn't drink. And when they asked me, what are you most passionate about? And I said, diet. They said, what about diet? And I said, fermented foods. They said, why? And I said, well, I grew up eating them, but then I got away from them when I went to college. But I was forced to have to go back to fermented foods in order to heal myself because the doctors didn't know what to do with me. So um, I got a degree in natural health studies and learned a lot about gut health and nursed myself back to health. And then, like I said, 15 years later, whenever they said, Julie, close your eyes and tell us the name of your new company, it just came out of me, Ferm Fatale. And they said, wow, did you just come up with that? And I said, oh yeah, but I've got something better. I don't even know where that came from. And they were like, no, you don't have anything better. That's really good. So, and then the next question was, what is it? And I said, it's a line of fermented cocktail mixes. And this was in 2014, Eddie. In 2014, people weren't talking about this shit. They weren't talking about it at all. And I took the idea and I pitched it to a couple of my previous clients in Florida, 2 women, and they believed in me and they funded the project early. But still, at the time, nobody was really talking about social beverages. In fact, I remember being on stage at BevNet Live for Startup Beverage of the Year Showdown in 2015. And at the time, I was calling my drinks convertible social beverages because I was afraid. And I also, was drinking a lot more alcohol at the time. And uh not that I was like drinking every night or anything, but I hadn't quite started to see everything as clearly, and I wanted to appeal to everybody, you know and so I was calling it convertible social beverage and was saying, yeah, you can drink it and it'll protect your liver if you do drink vodka, as a mixer. And after I ran out of capital at the end of 2015 and then drained my entire IRA that I had contributed to for almost 20 years, lost my apartment in downtown Santa Monica and was homeless and broke, that was definitely a major dark night of the soul period of time for me where I felt like I lost the company. I lost my ego, was shattered. I was in a really tough spot. A family tragedy happened, and I hung a rope from my apartment, from my new apartment. I had just gotten back on my feet in Venice, and I hung a rope, and I was looking at that rope, getting ready to put my head in the noose, and I was looking at it, and I heard this sarcastic Italian voice say, "Well, now do you know what you're living for?" And I was like, "Oh my God, you gotta be kidding me." It took this to get took all of that to get to this, and I realized that when you make decisions in life, it's so important that you make those decisions from a place of clarity and not from fear.
Mm,
Of course, I did everything I could do at the time. I mean, like I said, I tried to save the company and I ended up losing my ass over it, but I gained a lot of perspective. I gained You don't come out with 5 beverages all at the same time. You start your shit in a garage. You do it like I went out and got a production facility in downtown. I got all the brand new equipment. Like I thought I was doing it right because I had no experience at it. But after, hindsight's 2021, um, I was able to see, the mistakes I had made. And so I was sitting there thinking, man, I could use a life coach. I was like, fuck it, I'll become one. So I became a life coach, and then I coached myself, and the best piece of advice I gave myself was fake it till you make it. So I started doing these probiotic mocktail pop-up bars downtown Los Angeles at this dome. I'd go there every weekend with a cooler and ice and schlepping all this stuff and gathering all these fermented ingredients from my friends' companies and highlighting their brands and just doing everything I could to keep my finger on the pulse of passion, why I was doing what I was doing. Right. And the more I did that, the more money I made. And the investors that were previously involved came back on board and said, hey, I saw what you're doing on social media. You want to get back on the horse? And I was like, hell yeah. So I raised $500,000 in the height of COVID, launched the company 2 months before the pandemic, and I've been completely amazed by the newfound movement that's happening online. And I'm not talking about the sober movement, I'm talking about the sober curious movement. And, Ruby Warrington was going to interview me right before launch, and she saw some verbiage on the site that I still had up about the convertible social beverage. And at the time, I was actually going to call the line the world's first convertible social beverage. And she said, I saw this verbiage on your site and it says like you promote alcohol. And I was like, no, I really don't promote alcohol because I know it's not good for gut health. But, I don't want to scare anyone away and think that we're a sober company. And she pulled the plug on the podcast interview at the time. And I remember at launch feeling devastated because I was like, yeah, I'm gonna launch, I'm gonna go out with Ruby, but like ego, that's where I was at the time. And I look back on it and I'm like, thank God she said no to me because it gave me perspective that you need to pick a lane and stay in your lane and know what you're doing. So I pivoted. I was actually putting stickers over top of all the packaging that said the world's first probiotic mocktail. And at the beginning, I felt like a fraud because I still drink, not 100% sober. And I smoke a fair amount of weed. um, I'm not gonna sit here and say I'm perfect or anything, but um, I felt bad, in the beginning of like, who am I to come out with a non-alcoholic drink company and not be sober? And I realized, and I think that's why we have been brought together, that addiction has more to do with shame and less to do with the real behaviors, but it has most to do with shame. I thought if I'm going to shame myself, how am I going to help other people?
yeah. Yeah. Man, so many things to uncover and dig into, but I think maybe I'd like to focus on these little aspects here in the end that you just mentioned because I find that it's actually one of the things that I hate the most about the sober curious movement is that weirdly when it started I was hoping it would be a place for people who are curious about sobriety to
Hmm.
go in, but it ended up being a place where you can be sober and curious, but you better be sober, right? Is and
Right.
there are a lot of people paying lip service, I feel like. And I've talked to Ruby quite a bit and we've been on each other's podcasts. And so I understand the impetus behind it. And we can argue about whether alcohol is good for you or not. It's not. I think it depends more on circumstances than people think, but I can get into that in a second. But I was really hoping that it would be look, it might be a softer movement than the traditional recovery movement, but there's no doubt that in the end, everybody within it that I've talked to believes that you really should be sober, though. You can kind of dip your toe in it for a while, but if you really get it, then you should be sober. And I'm really hoping we move away from those sorts of judgments. So when you were saying pick your lane, I wasn't quite sure which lane you'd end up picking, but I guess you ended up here. And so it sounds like the
I
lane.
do think it was a good choice.
Well, it sounds like the lane you picked was the one where, people are adults and they should be given autonomy over their own life. And I drink and it's not a problem in my life. Would my life be better if I didn't drink? I don't know the answer to that. I don't drink a lot. I drink very sporadically. And when I drink, I don't drink an actual high amount of alcohol. And
Well, do you eat bread?
I do, but sporadically. Like I'm
Right.
primarily gluten free, but then I eat bread. So, and that's exactly what I'm saying
Yeah,
is,
me too.
I think what I don't want to end up happening is this idea where we even think that there's a perfect version. Let me speak a little bit to what I mean by is alcohol healthy, because I hear a lot of people in the sober curious movement talk about how alcohol is always a poison. I don't think that's true. I think when people are going through incredibly difficult life periods, sometimes alcohol is their medicine, and telling them that they are killing themselves with drinking is potentially completely ignoring everything else that's happening in their life right now. And maybe this is the thing that gets them to tomorrow. And you making them feel badly about them doing the best that they can is asinine, and you need to stop it. And so,
It's just exacerbating their shame, their childhood
yeah,
wounds.
yeah. I mean, look, do we all want to be Buddha on a mountain, just like floating deeply in space and disconnected from all attachments? Maybe, but not all of us really crave that. And so I'm looking for a world where we allow people to have their choices, including the choices that they recognize are less than perfect and less than ideal. I think this judgment that because that something is taxing to your liver, or that something could develop into a problem, or that something was a problem at another point in your life, that you are therefore obligated to make a specific choice about life is a very limited, non-humanistic view, and it's one that I'm trying to get as far away from as possible. And so I'm happy to hear. You look, we have your product. I love it. It's one of the things I love about it actually is the no net carbs piece, because like I fell in love with ginger beer, for instance, when I eliminated a lot of drinking. But the problem is ginger beer is loaded with sugar, loaded with it. And so then I would try the diet ones, but then you find out how bad the alternative sweeteners are to your gut and your microbiome. And it kind of felt to some extent like I'm having to make the best of the worst choices constantly.
Yeah.
And again, for me, it's all about variety. So whether it's flavored water or essence flavored water, sparkling or not, whether it's your teas that I want to talk about the flavors that you do have, because they're very unique.
Thank you.
The people who will try these, and we're going to do a giveaway for everybody listening to the podcast. So some of you will be lucky enough to get to try this as part of the giveaway. They have a very unique flavor profile that doesn't try to emulate a drink, right? There are a lot of people that are trying to make these drinks that will make you feel like you're having a drink without having a drink. This is just
Kind of
something
like that. It's kind of like that. I
it's
mean, that's
fun. It's
why
fun to drink.
yeah, it's supposed to be fun. But I just want to touch on a few things that you mentioned, because we did do a lot of research to back the ethos of our brand, and some of the research has proven that anything over 4% alcohol kills good bacteria, right? So we know that the digestion starts in the mouth. So as soon as you put a shot of vodka in your mouth, you immediately begin to kill good enzymes and bacteria in the mouth that help to support your digestion. This is a fact. And as it goes down, obviously it's killing good bacteria. Now, I agree with you about moderation, and there's a time and a place for everything. But, if you have autoimmune disease, like I have lived with autoimmune disease, like you sometimes really need to be careful. So the drinks were really developed to stay under the 4% alcohol category and make it feel like if your friends are having Cosmos, well, I could open up a cosmopolitan shrubbucha and put it into a martini glass with a side wedge of lime, and I'm at the party, and I'm a part of it. I'm a part of it. I'm sick with autoimmune, but I'm a part of it, and I
Yeah.
don't feel excluded.
Right.
Like that was really why the drinks were created, is because the science and the research shows anything above 4% kills good bacteria. If you're sick, you need to have things that support you, right?
Absolutely.
But
I,
if
th-
you're
I think
not
part of the
sick,
point, I
if you're
think part
not
of the point
sick,
that I was making, part of the point that I was making is chronic stress also destroys good bacteria. And
absolutely.
we don't live in a vacuum. We just don't. And so sometimes you do make the best bad choice you can make. And I'm incredibly fortunate now. I have Hashimoto's and it's well addressed, et cetera, but I take medication for it. That's the route I took. Um, and so I am aware of what I put in my body, certainly, but I also just manage it on a daily basis. And I feel
Yeah.
fortunate. I have the resources to do it, and I've at least some of the knowledge. Knowledge is never really complete, but I have some of the knowledge to be able to support those decisions. I just want to give more people the option to support their choices in the way that they do. And again, I think the drinks you're mentioning are such a good um, addition for somebody to feel like they have choice, right? As humans, one of the things we hate so much is having choice taken away from us.
Right.
And so I'm all for more choices so that people
Hmm.
feel free. And yes, if they reach for a drink one time and then reach for a Ferm Fatale the next moment, it's not, they don't have to beat themselves up over one or the other, right?
Exactly, exactly. I remember being addicted to cigarettes, and I sometimes share this story because it's the closest I have to compare to what it feels like to be an addict.
Hmm.
And I remember I was teaching yoga, I was a closet smoker. I was smoking probably like 5 cigarettes a day. This was many, many years ago.
Yep.
I was in my late 20s, and I would go in the back and I would smoke like half a cigarette, and I'd put it out, and then I'd wash my hands, and I'd go and do a massage or teach a yoga class, and I, again, total imposter syndrome, felt horrible about what I was doing. And I've been meditating since 19 years old, so I have a little bit of awareness. And I remember in that moment, like, oh my God, I'm in the cycle of craving and aversion. I crave the cigarette, and then I hate myself for it.
Hmm.
But then I want it again. I got pissed off. I was like, fuck you, cigarettes, ruining my life. You're making me your tool, and I don't like the sound of this. Like I got mad at the cigarettes,
Yeah.
and I needed to, because I had done patches, I had done hypnosis, I had done all these things, and the shame game, it wasn't working any longer. But when I got pissed off and realized that I was the master of my own domain, that if I wanted out of the cycle, out of the rat race, I needed to stop smoking. But I could not just take the cigarettes away. No, I needed to replace it with
Right.
something else.
Yes.
And I've noticed that people take things away and then they fail. And it's because they don't feel rewarded. And a lot of times that's why we drink. That I mean, everyone knows that, you know, like, drink to celebrate.
Well, you drink to
But
celebrate, you drink to numb out, you drink for many, many
mhm,
reasons. But that replacement thing you're talking about is so key because not doing something is not an action. It doesn't actually change anything about the way your brain works. In terms of the neuroplasticity, if you want to change a habit, you have to change the habit, not get rid of the old habit. Just removing the old habit leaves it fully intact. And I think you're totally right that that's where a lot of people fail in behavioral changes, they assume, well, I'll just not smoke the cigarettes. But the problem is that leaves the
Mhm.
cigarette smoking habit as is until one
Right.
moment you get triggered again and you go right back into it. And then you feel crazy. You feel like, why can't I get a hold of this? And you're, it's just because you're missing this very singular piece, which is, that's why one of our mottos is stop trying to get sober. Um,
Yeah.
the deal is not to get sober. The deal is to replace drinking with other habits in your life that are positive. And to the extent that you do that, a lot of people reach a moment where, oh, I have enough good habits in my life to offset enough of the bad habits that I've had in my life where I'm good now. And they just settle into a new plateau that they enjoy and like. And I think that's
Mhm.
totally fine and
Yeah.
a reason to celebrate.
Absolutely. Yeah, one
Let
of our
can you
mottos is live your day, live your joy day and night. Like,
Yeah,
it doesn't you can drink shabu, you can have Cosmos for breakfast if you want.
yeah,
Like, do you, boo?
right, right.
Just be happy and celebrate, because when we're in a state of gratitude is there's not a lot of negativity that can get past that.
That's true. That's true. I'd love to talk a little bit about, let people know. So like, where's the brand available? How can they get some? I mean, obviously we're going to have the
Thank
giveaway and
you.
we'll give them the rules below, but talk to us a little
Yeah.
bit about what's going on with the brand.
So we have a website, fermfatale.com. You can certainly purchase there. But we're growing. I mean, we should have the Western Seaboard covered by the end of summer. So we're 8 stores in Seattle, 24 stores in Portland, Oregon. We were in Erewhon in Los Angeles for 2 years until recently, and we're pivoting likely to Bristol Farms and taking on a different type of distributorship. But I mean, locally on the west side, Rainbow Acres is where I shop, and we're there, and a couple other places in the marina. But we have a spot on our site called, where we're at, and there's a
Cool.
huge map of a locator map. But exciting things that are happening with the brand. I'm building out a page called the Dirty Dozen, and I'm super excited about this because it allows me to stay in my vein of passion. And so I mentioned anything over 4% kills good gut bacteria, blah blah blah. But whenever I'm talking about drinking dirty, I want even more options for
Mm,
drinking dirty. So what I find most fascinating is that this form of food preservation has been around for centuries and centuries, and different cultures all do wild fermentation.
yeah.
So, like, I leave for Oaxaca, Mexico on Saturday. I'll be down there studying pulque, which is a type of fermented agave sap, and tapache, fermented pineapple. And, we use these as bases for
Yeah.
my probiotic mocktails. So, I mean, like I said, I get to stay in my vein of creativity, creating drinks with these Dirty Dozen, and then educating people about the historical origin stories of each of them. And um, it's so much more than just the culture in the bottle. How about the
Yeah.
culture of the world and how we're all interconnected?
Mm,
We have a podcast. I have a podcast called We Are the Soil, where I have conversations with people around where gut health meets spirituality.
mm,
I find it fascinating that the microbiome of the earth mirrors our own collective microbiome.
yeah.
So we have about 60 years left of topsoil because of what's happened with the climate change. And one of the biggest things that we can do, two biggest things that we can do to reverse climate change: one, compost. Start composting at the house. Stop putting your kitchen scraps in the trash, and start making a difference that way. But most importantly, know your own negative core beliefs and start to take action on healing yourself, because healed people heal people and hurt people hurt people.
Mm,
And we are so interconnected that our energies affect one another. And, I mean, composting, drinking dirty, great, but it's the healing that we all need the most, so
mm.
we can show up for one another.
Absolutely. Amen to that. And hopefully, you know, people hear these conversations and again, reduce their own shame, start connecting deeply to what brings them joy, and give
Yeah,
themselves permission for gradual improvement, gradual change, and again, change that supports them in their circumstances and their needs. No need to make people feel worse about what's going on for them.
exactly.
Let's support everybody towards positive change in their life.
Mhm.
So cool to hear the story of the company. I mean, it's people don't normally understand how hard it is to start a brand and keep it going. It sounds like
Yeah,
you've been through a lot to get here. So beautiful to see it flourishing again.
I really, really appreciate the support, ID, because like, yeah, I raised all that money in the height of COVID, but I'm back to raising right now.
Yeah,
So we're female founded and female financed brand, and it's important for me just to stay um, with my finger on the pulse of why I'm doing this
yeah.
every day,
Mm,
instead of like, oh my god, all these things are happening, how am I ever going to do this, and just trust that there's a process to it all. And
absolutely.
the more challenge I go through, the better I get at letting go,
Mm,
it seems like.
always, always, right? Well, once you
Yeah.
realize there's only so much you control, you start focusing all your effort on the things you control. Um, Thank you
Exactly.
so much, Julie, for
Thank
coming.
you.
Can't wait to keep drinking these amazing drinks and to share them with our audience. Thanks for
Yeah,
supporting what I hope will evolve into the more true sober curious movement of people just experimenting with how much, how little, or whether they want to include alcohol in their life. Um,
let's keep this conversation going, because I feel like it's very expansive and
yes,
people need to hear it. So let's keep it
absolutely.
going.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. Everybody here, uh, go look at the details either in the post that celebrates this podcast or on our blog or in iTunes, if that's where you get this, for details on the giveaway so you can get some of this stuff for yourself and celebrate yourself. Have a
Live
great,
clean, drink dirty.
yes, have a great weekend, everybody. See you next week. Thank you for tuning in to the Ignited Heroes Recovery Podcast. I really hope you found the information here useful and that we'll see you back here next week. And look, I want to make sure that this podcast is the most useful it can be for you, so please let me know by emailing info@ignited.com if there are any specific topics or questions you'd like to have addressed. As usual, if you like this episode, I would love for you to leave us a 5-star review and rating. Thanks, and see you next week.